Welcome to Pop Stuff. Welcome to my orbital platform. The word fan, according to my research, is derived from the word fanatic. Now, fanatic seems like a pretty harsh word to use toward people nowadays, but according to my research, the word fan is derived from fanatic. Now, I'm a fan of a lot of things: cheese, chocolate, Star Wars, all kinds of franchises. Being a fan isn't really that big a deal anymore. I'm a fan of Bill Maher. He has a news show, I guess you would call it, on HBO. It's called Real Time with Bill Maher. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. Real Time is just that it gets real. He invites people from the other side, which I think he's kind of a libertarian Democrat type, but he'll invite Republicans and sensational folks sometimes to his show, which is cool. I always like that, get the other side. A lot of times nowadays you don't get the other side. And, these folks are walking into the lion's den, as he calls it. And a lot of his politics, I agree with a lot of it. I even own his movie called Religulous. I've studied religion for several decades, and a lot of what he says in that movie is true. I never have agreed with his style. He can be kind of mocking. I mean, he is a comic. And he recently started talking about comic books. So, when you mock the other side, or the enemy, or people that don't agree with you, or you don't agree with them, you're just going to piss them off. And he doesn't have a problem with that, He has been disinvited to a lot of colleges to speak, but that's not anything uncommon. A lot of people nowadays get uninvited from colleges because of all the social justice stuff going on. But I was a fan of his, and in November, Stan Lee died. And he said something on Twitter, I think it was, because I completely missed it. I only watch him on YouTube. He said something about people who are fans of comic books need to grow up or something like that. Like I said, I completely missed it. People thought he was disparaging Stan Lee, and he says he wasn't. I haven't read the tweet. It's been so long ago, I don't care, but I guess other people have commented on this, and he actually did a segment or an editorial on his show last Friday night, and I didn't get a chance to watch it until a few days ago. And he's welcome to his opinion, of course, just like everybody else is. And I said, well, I'm not going to unsubscribe from him on YouTube. They make money on YouTube. A lot of people make money on YouTube from ads. So I don't know if he's making any money, that much money on YouTube. I know he's wealthy, compared to me anyway. He's donated lots of money to certain politicians, and, he's an advocate for legalizing marijuana and animal abuse, animal testing, which is cool. I've just been a fan of his, even though I don't agree with everything he says or how he says it. But this segment, and I'm going to link to it in the description, he was pretty harsh. And if you haven't seen it, it may piss you off, because you're watching me because you're interested in the same things I am, which is science fiction franchises, pop culture. I mainly talk about science fiction franchises. There's a lot more to pulp culture than science fiction, but it's just what interests me, you know. And hopefully, if it interests me, it'll interest you and other people. But it's pretty rough, and it didn't make me mad. It didn't piss me off, but it got me thinking, which is good. I like people. I mean, I have some people comment on my videos once in a while, and it gets me thinking, and I'd like for people to get me to think about stuff. So, it may piss you off if you watch the video, if you haven't seen it or heard about it. But here's the thing, I've had a couple of days to think about it, and in the first place, a lot of his fans are also fans of comic books and Marvel movies, and he mentions in his video, his editorial, that collectible action figures or dolls and grown adults collecting that thing, that we need to grow up. And I've thought about this over the years. People have told me that I'm well read, and I have studied philosophy, psychology, and religion, and even some physics over the years, and it's a hobby to me. It's fun. When somebody has something that they don't absolutely need to survive, I classify that as a toy. There's guys that collect guns, they collect four-wheelers, and there's guys that collect, shoes. There's gals that collect purses and shoes. See, they don't consider that something that's compared to a toy. But as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have to have it to survive, then it's a toy. That's just the way I looked at it. I've looked at it, and I've thought about it a lot. I can sell my stuff and get some money back from it. I mean, some of it, you could call it an investment, but I don't collect for that. A wise man told me a long time ago, just get stuff that you like, that you enjoy, It's also kind of biological. I mean, we're hunter-gatherers. And after agriculture was invented, we could collect stuff. We collected food, to make it through the winter. Agriculture changed the human race. And there's no more, we didn't have to migrate anymore to the better climates to survive where the food was. So we started collecting things, and we started colonizing into groups, into tribes, and into towns. So anyway, it's biological collecting stuff. I don't know if Bill Maher collects anything or not. And the reason I'm even putting this out here on my channel is because this is one of the times I don't agree with him at all. I mean, when you collect, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of a game. It's fun. It's an escape. I mean, movies are an escape. The novels he talked about are an escape. That's what a lot of this is, some of it's therapy. I also draw, and I enjoy drawing. And that's a therapy, because some of the stuff I do in life could be kind of stressful. And, it's my time and it's my money. He's an advocate for legalized marijuana, which, for medicinal purposes, and for pain relief, and for I think it's good for your eyes, your vision, especially if you have some vision problems. But if it's just for entertainment purposes for him, isn't that an escape for him? I mean, does he have to have that to? I mean, I can imagine that doing his show can be stressful. So is it a stress relief mechanism for him? I gotta be honest, I knew some guys and gals that smoked pot when I was younger, but they quit. They grew out of it. They grew up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with smoke. I'm not judging people that smoke marijuana, but he's judging people that collect comic books and action figures. I think there's a disconnect. You know, comic books deal with what called archetypes, and so do a lot of mythology, Greek mythology. Comic books have been around so long that they've created their own mythology. Star Wars has only been around since 1977. It's got its own mythology. It's got what you could call archetypes in it. Luke Skywalker, Yoda. Comic books also dealt with social commentary. You could tell by a comic book when it was written because it reflected our society, just like Star Trek always had Star Trek was about social commentary, and a lot of times so were comic books. Books were started back around the Second World War as an escape, and they were used for propaganda, but they had a purpose. And some are still running today, long-running comic books for decades. So I don't think throwing that to the wind. I mean, I've read some comic books, especially some graphic novels that'll really make you think about life, So I don't really think he's right there. I can't agree with him there at all. He's not religious. He's an atheist. I own his movie, Religious, like I said, and he talks about the Bible, the dumbest book ever written, which, if you know about the history of the Bible, not the contents, but the actual history of the Bible, it's got a lot of hit and miss stuff in there. It's been revised several times, unknown authors, all kinds of stuff. But he talked about Corinthians, and one of the things that I do in my life is I marry people. Now, I don't really share my religious views or political views because they're mine. But let me just say, with my study over the past few decades, my view on things is probably a lot different than most people's. But anyway, I'm familiar with the Corinthians verse that he says because it's popular for marriages, and I have recited that many times. And it says something about, when I was a child, I had childish things, but when I grew to be a man, I put away those childish things. But for him to recite that, him not be a believer, it's kind of dubious there, Bill. And also, other cultures embrace your inner child. I mean, we're all here because we all think about this question, why we're here. And we're here for many things, but that's another conversation. But we all want to be happy. And other cultures embrace the inner child. They believe that there is still a child within us. And to ignore that is doing yourself a disservice. Play is important. People play games all the time. In fact, I think he's a fan of the Mets. I think he used to be, or still is, a part owner of the Mets. And you know what the Mets are? It's grown men playing with balls and a stick. They literally call it a game. So, that's just an example of how I can't agree with that editorial and how he feels about this. I mean, I don't have anything against sports. Sports is very good exercise, and it's fun. But there's billions of dollars that go into professional sports, and he partakes of this. And honestly, it's just a bunch of grown guys playing with balls and some sticks. Some of them, they're taking balls and they're throwing through baskets. I mean, and they count points. So in football, it's a gladiatorial spectator sport. Where they take a ball and throw it and chase each other. So how grown up is that? I mean, if you want to think about it, if you want to parse it down like he did with comic books, So there we go. I'm sensing a double standard with him, and I just got to say something about it. I don't know how long he's been in L.A., but I think that's where he lives. Yeah, because he talks about the fires out there. I've met some people from L.A., and, they're good people, but they kind of look at me differently because, it's different out there than it is here. And I don't want to say that he's been out L.A. too long, and I don't want to say that he's an old white guy because I'm an old white guy. But I'm really open-minded, and like I said, I try to be, I'm not an expert at a lot of things, but I have some knowledge. I'll put it that way. So, the video that I'm going to put in the description, it's got almost as many dislikes as it does likes. And I wish he'd thought more about this before he commented. Of course, he may have had some grief, so much grief he had to comment. He seemed like he was outraged, which... We've got this outrage culture now. Is he a part of that outrage culture now? I think he despises the outrage culture. But he seemed outraged. He did. He seemed outraged. I'm trying really hard not to, talk bad about him. I just completely and utterly disagree with that editorial he put up the other day. And since I'm his fan, what do you think about me? He said that he lost 40,000 Twitter followers, and he said, good riddance. And there's, a thing going on now where some folks out there in LA that make some of our favorite franchises have been talking some pretty bad stuff about some of the fans. And I'm thinking, where would they be without the fans? Where would Bill be without his fans? Where would any of those folks be without their fans? And if they're thinking that, well, we don't need you, what kind of business model is that? Why even stir this crap up? Kevin Smith, I'm a fan of Kevin Smith. I did a video the other day that they're going to make another Jay and Silent Bob, and he was talking crap about Kevin Smith. Bill was talking crap about Kevin Smith and back and forth. And some of these guys, some of these celebrities do this to get attention because attention means, oftentimes, revenue. They do it all the time. But I'm not saying that Bill's sensational or that Kevin's sensational, but I don't picture them guys as doing that, really, for sensation's sake, just for views. They don't really have to, And Kevin Smith liked The Last Jedi, and I did not. But I'm still a big fan of Kevin Smith. Huge fan. I was a huge fan of Bill Maher, but Bill Maher literally said good riddance to some of his fans. Now, if they were psychopaths or sociopaths, yeah, but I'm a fan of his, and he kind of doesn't need me. And it got me thinking. I've been thinking for 2 or 3 days now. I've been busy doing other stuff, but I'm, thinking. And do I need him? I'm the fan. So I was going to stay subscribed to Bill Maher, real time. But I went ahead and unsubscribed because he doesn't need me. He wasn't talking directly to me, but he doesn't need me. and I don't need him. Who knows? Maybe one of these days I'll start following him again. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I don't. I'm you know, I follow Mark Hamill and Neil deGrasse Tyson and you know, some other people. I'm not real active there. I don't follow Bill, but I guess I'm just done with him. I mean, I've thought about subscribing back to him because, you know, he pops up in my YouTube feed because I was subscribed to him. But I don't know, something's changed. I just don't feel like watching him anymore. I mean, I guess we're broke up. I don't know. Anyway, I really needed to say this. It's my view, askew, of Bill Maher and the situation, and it's too bad Stan Lee was involved in it. But I don't even read comic books anymore. Once I'm done with somebody, I'm done. And they pissed me off in the mid '90s with all the variant covers and jacking the price up. So I haven't. I mean, I still buy used ones. I got some buddies that have comic books shops, and I go buy some used ones and read them, and they're a good escape. And the art, I love the art. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, there's some good art in there. I don't care what anybody says. And there's some good stories, really good stories. I mean, I've got the Infinity Gauntlet, you know, and it's just fun, good escape. I mean, it's probably not as good as marijuana, I don't know. But I don't, you know, have any idea. But I can put it down and I can go, you know, drive a truck if I wanted to. So, anyway, I think I've said enough on that. And I really would like for y'all to comment and tell me what you think. Like I said, I'm going to put a link to his video, and you know, watch the video. But if it makes you mad, just calm down, you know, because it's not really that big a deal, but it makes you think. I mean, other people are still think to this day about geeks and fans. They still to this day think about it. I was talking to a friend that owns a comic book shop today. You know, they still think this. I mean, if you've seen Stranger Things, I was one of those kids, but it wasn't as smooth as it was in that. I mean, they called you Space Cadet, and they were really hateful back then compared to the ones in Stranger Things, and it still goes on today. At least maybe not, you know, blatant like it used to be when I was a kid, but it's still there. It's still there. A lot of things are still there, aren't they? Just under the surface, I guess. Well, thanks for watching, and please subscribe, and we will see you next video.